Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through the sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and toward our distant rest began to charge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind. Drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas, quick boys, in ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear, at every jolt, the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cut of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friends, you would not tell me with such high zest, to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, Dulce et decorum est, proportia mori. Speaker. The speaker of the poem is a young male soldier in the British Army during World War I. From his knowledge of Latin, it can be inferred that the soldier is well educated. Occasion. The poem is written from the battlefield of World War I. The horrors of the war prompted the young soldier to capture the nightmares he witnessed while fighting overseas. Audience. The poem is directed toward people in the soldier's homelands who have never experienced war before. In the last stanza, the speaker directly addresses the audience as you, to tell them that if they had witnessed the harsh realities of war, they would never preach that it is righteous to die for your own country. Wilson seeks to dispel common misconceptions regarding war. While people back home believe that it is an honor to fight and even die for your countries, Wilson illustrates that war is closer to hell than any notion of honor. He opens up by describing the treacherous conditions soldiers experience and compares the soldiers to old beggars in sacks. The speaker continues on using vivid imagery to capture the suffering and death caused by the use of chemical weapons in World War I. With these vivid descriptions, the speaker concludes that the pretenses people have about war are completely false. Subject. War is the subject. War, specifically the conditions of World War I, is the subject of the poem. Using gruesome imagery, the speaker explores the abhorrent realities soldiers experience during this war. Tone. At the beginning of the poem, there is an urgency in the speaker's voice. The exclamation marks following gas, gas, and the enjambment in line 9 pushes the reader forward as the soldiers seek to escape the mustard gas. However, in the latter half of the poem, the author's tone shifts to bitterness. Marred by losing a fellow soldier, the speaker is frustrated with those back home for a lack of understanding. He accuses them of spewing what he calls the old lie, which hints at his bitterness towards them.
In the first stanza, Owen describes that the soldiers are in trenches, in a battlefield during World War I. He says, coughing like hags, which is saying how him and the other soldiers are all sick and worn down from the war. He uses a simile when he says, like old beggars under sacks. He uses imagery when he says, towards our distant rest. Owen uses an alliteration when he says, men march to sleep. The soldiers are undergoing trauma of the war, which is shown in the line, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue. In stanza 2, Owen starts off by saying gas, gas, which is showing the mustard gas used in World War I and the chemical warfare. Next, he says an ecstasy of fumbling, which is showing the frenzy the soldiers are in to get their equipment on in time to escape the gas. He then says, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling, which is saying that one person got left behind in the gas. Misty panes and thick green light is saying that the soldiers are looking at the dying man through an unreal window during the traumatic scene. When Owen says, I saw him drowning, this is saying how the speaker is seeing the man being consumed by the gas just like a drowning man in the sea. In the third stanza, guttering is describing the tears that are flowing down the face of the dying man, which is a symptom of inhaling the toxic gas. In the fourth stanza, you is the audience, which is the people back home to the soldier's homeland. And watch the white eyes withering in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. This is the speaker describing and using vivid imagery of the man dying from gas. He is saying how if the people back home could see what he has seen, they would not praise those who have died in action. It is not peaceful like they imagine. The last two lines, which are a lie, are Dulce et Decorum pro patria more, which means it is sweet and proper to die for one's own country.